So if you're not willing to learn, no one can stop you. So let's start with the very words of George Bernard Shaw. Enlightening greetings to all the participants and the core adjudicators present here. This is Yash on behalf of the Debating Society of KIT Chronicle. Welcome you all to this assisting workshop for Pratija 2021. Pratija is a national Asian parliamentary debating competition organized with great enthusiasm witnessing conflict of confronts, duel of doubts, and battle of minds, presented with soft speech but hard and valorous arguments. With a unique goal on the horizon, Kit has taken a spunky path to tailor the freshers and the experienced debaters to polish themselves with an art of debating and developing their skills. And to guide us, we have today Sayantan Bhattacharya, Symbiosis Law School, Pune, Maharashtra with us. He is one of our core adjudicators from Pratija 2021. We welcome you, Sayantan. If I start talking about Sayantan's achievement as far as this debating culture is concerned, even this evening will be less. So let's try towards our today's workshop, and I would like to hand over and give this virtual dice to Sayantan. Sayantan, you can continue.
Yeah. Can you all hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. So, yeah, a very good evening to everybody. My name is Sayantan Bhattacharya. I'll be one of your co-adjudicators. And alongside me, I'll have Suman Mitra from GLC and Ariana Anand from National Law University, Jodhpur. And they're both excellent debaters. I wish they were here. They're here as well, but due to some commitments, I will be taking this session for you all. Cool. Without further ado, let's dive in. I'll keep this short. So there are certain elements which you should be aware of when engaging with Asian parliamentary debate. There are things that you should know as a speaker when you're marking your adjudicators, as well as if you're a first-time adjudicator, you might be confused about how speaker scores work. So I'll keep this focused. Do ask me if you have questions. I hope you will understand what I'm saying. Cool? Yeah. Yash, next slide. Whoever is manning this.
Yeah, is it cool? Is it visible?
Yeah, it's visible.
Yeah.
Okay.
You can start.
So here's the format. We have two teams called government and opposition. Some people also refer to them by other names like affirmative for government, negative for opposition. Some people also call government proposition. It's not a lot, it's just nomenclature. You can call them anything. The broad thing is this: the government proposes the motion. So the government has to stand in support of what is being argued, and the opposition has to go against it. It's as simple as that. Second, yeah, there are 3 speakers each team. We'll come to this in a bit. The adjudicator panel can have 3 kinds of people. It will almost always have a chair, and it might or might not have either of the other 2 people, which is a panelist and a trainee. What is the difference? In Asian parliamentary, there is no unanimous verdict that you get. Like, you don't get one verdict from the panel as a whole. What happens in Asian parliamentary is that every single judge gives you their own verdict. Then you check out the ratio, which is the number of people who've given it to one team and the number of people who've given it to the other. Whoever has more judges giving it in their favor wins the round. But there's a catch here. Only chairs and panelists have their votes counted. Trainees don't have their votes counted. But trainees will be marked nonetheless by the teams on the basis of the kind of feedback that they provide after the debate. Next, we have something called protected time. So I'll come to points of information in a bit. Essentially, a point of information is where you ask a question, which the question is aimed to cast doubt on the case being presented by the other team. When can you ask a point of information to the other team? Between the 1st and the 6th minute of their speech. So once the speaker starts speaking, there will be no questions till 1 minute has passed, and there will be no further questions after 6 minutes have passed. So the time between the first and the 6th minute is when you can ask your questions. Finally, no web surfing is allowed during the debate. You can have notes that you've taken earlier. You can have your matter prep files, physical documents and stuff. You're not allowed to search the internet for the motion being deliberated on, very simply because it'd be unfair to the other team. Debating should be about what you've read until then and how well you can argue in the absence of knowledge as well, given the motion. Next slide. Whoever is manning the PowerPoint, can we go to the next slide? Yeah. This is the flow of the debate. I'll go through this briefly. The Prime Minister is the first speaker. Then we have the leader of opposition from the opposition side. How would the no surfing rule be implemented? So, like, I've been for online debates for a year. I'll give you a very easy understanding of how it's implemented. When people copy from the internet, they generally pick, this happened in British parliamentary as well. When people copy stuff from the internet, it's generally the first 4 or 5 pages that they can go to at max. If you go below that in Google, it's useless information that you have, so you lose the debate anyway. And if it's the first 4 or 5 things, and you're citing too many statistics, too many facts, your arguments sound too perfect, you can be sure that your opposition team will also go on Google and search for the motion after the round. If they find anything fishy, they'll let the chair know, and then you will be in serious trouble. Cool. That's how it happens generally. It's very easy getting caught. People get caught all the time because of this very thing. Debating is competitive. The other team is not going to sit by if things sound too perfect, which is why it should be genuine. If you're genuine, then there's no place where people can get something like that. So the purpose of the POI is to break your flow, right? You're supposed to be able to manage to come back on track even after that. That's the whole purpose. You get asked a question, you're stumped for a bit, you answer it, but you're supposed to come back on track after that. If you can't do it, then you should practice towards doing that, because that's the whole point of it.
No, sir. What I think she was asking is, like, should the person, open his mic and ask the POI, or should he or she?
Okay. Acha. I understand. I'm so sorry. I didn't get that. It depends on how the speaker themselves want the POI to be asked. When you're going as a speaker, you have either of 2 options. You can either say, I will take POIs in chat, in which case the other team is supposed to write point of information or POI in the chat. If the speaker accepts that, then the speaker pauses, and the person who has posed the POI can unmute themselves and ask that question. This is the standard that's followed. Some speakers also prefer interruptions. I would advise against it because, yeah, it takes up a lot of unnecessary time from your debate, right? So just go with that. Write POI in the chat. If the speaker accepts it, you can unmute and ask your question. Cool. Coming to the flow of the debate, the Prime Minister goes first from government. Then you have the leader of opposition come from the opposition side, obviously. Then you have the deputy Prime Minister go. Then the deputy leader of opposition. Then government whip, opposition whip. Very simple till now. In reply speeches, the order is just reversed. So after the opposition whip is done, you have the opposition reply speaker. So it's 2 people from opposition coming together. And the last speaker of the round will be the government reply speaker. I hope this is simple to understand. You can take a screenshot of this screen if you're finding any difficulty with it. And just refer to it if you don't have the thing memorized. Generally, your chair will also announce who has to come and speak. So it shouldn't be an issue. Okay. Next slide. Okay. Adjudicator. An adjudicator, so what is an adjudicator supposed to be? The standard is an average, reasonable, and logical person. There's also one more thing. He should be a blank slate. They should be a blank slate, but they should also be reasonable and aware of what is happening in the world generally. Like nowadays, it's modified to an average, reasonable newspaper reader. Okay? So somebody who's aware very minimally, like superfluously about everything, and somebody who can apply logic to what he's hearing the speaker say. The adjudicator cannot supply arguments, however. Let's say I, as a speaker, say something like, communism results in poverty, therefore it is bad. This is an assertion. I have given no reasoning as the speaker. The adjudicator might know why this is true or false, but the adjudicator cannot supply what he knows to what the speaker has said. If the speaker does not explain this point, the adjudicator will not consider this point. He only considers things which have reasons and examples tied to them, which is what the blank slate means. Next, listens to all speeches, then provides a verdict with explanation. I'll come to this in a second. And judging always happens in comparatives between streams, right? One sec. So what is a comparative? Let's say somebody comes and says, volatility in the stock market is very bad during times of crises like the COVID economic ramifications. So it is legitimate for the government to put restrictions on the market to ensure that it is organized and it is like the bottom doesn't fall out of the market and we don't go into depression. The opposition team says, no, the investors have the right to withdraw their money should that be necessary, so on and so forth. There is a clash here. One team says that there should be restrictions. The other team says there shouldn't be restrictions. The adjudicator is to consider this clash on the basis of the reasons that are provided by either team. Whoever gives more convincing reasons will take that clash. Whoever takes the most important clash, whoever wins the most important clashes in the debate will win the debate. Simple as that. Final thing about adjudicators, after the debate is over, the speakers are made to leave the breakout room. The judges think for 5 to 7 minutes. They then they tell each other what their ratios are without giving reasons, okay? So after the round, if you are an adjudicator and there are 3 or 4 of you left in that room, all you're supposed to do is be like, guys, should we say who we've given the victory to? Everybody's like, okay. Then you go like one speaker and all. So somebody says Gov, somebody says Ob, blah, blah. Let's say there are 3 people and it comes to 2 people in favor of government, 1 person in favor of opposition. There's a dissent there. The dissent or the minority will go give their verdict first, followed by the majority. And in any situation, the chair, by convention, is the last person to give their feedback. Okay? The chair gives their feedback at the end. That's all. Okay, next slide. Now, this is very simple. What does the Prime Minister do? Defines the key terms and sets up the debate. Some people take this too far and like start defining the most obvious things. Don't do that. Just define the key terms in the debate, right? As it says, key terms. I'll give you an example. Then he gives an outline of the team's debate. So what does this mean? So the Prime Minister, they can say that we'll have 3 arguments from government or 4, however many you're arguing. This is the first one. This is the second, third, fourth. You just mention the arguments. And then you move on to what is mentioned as the team's position and case, elaborating and presenting arguments. So after you've said, greetings to the house, blah, blah, you've set up the debate. You've told what the 3 or 4 things that you're going to argue are. You've outlined it. You start going into your substantive arguments. You start explaining your points. I'll give you an example. let's say there's a motion like this house would, I don't know, like ban guns or something. The Prime Minister will come. What does key term definition and setting up the debate mean? You give context as to what is happening in the world with regards to guns. Why is it so necessary for this motion to be there? So you see things like ban guns in America. Let's give more context. Normal civilians can't purchase guns. So you say stuff like gun violence is rising. There are shootouts in schools. We understand that the Second Amendment is there. But regardless, we don't think that legal fiction should be allowed to be more important than the human lives that are lost. Therefore, we should ban guns. So what have you done? You've given some context. That is called setting up the debate. And then you said that you're going to defend the motion and say that guns should be banned. Then you outline your debates. You say there are 3 points from side government. 1, we say that constitutional rights can be remedied. 2, we think the experiment of giving gun rights to civilians has not worked out well. It has had terrible impacts on the people. 3, these are the reasons why we think there are many reasons why banning guns or gun purchases will result in a better and safer society in America. These are my constructives. Then you go into elaborating each point. Correct? So I hope this makes it clear. Also, the structure of the debate of each argument is assertion. So let's say I say things like free purchase of guns results in gun violence because people of a criminal bent of mind can purchase guns easily. The impact that it has is you can have school shootings, you can have people feeling unsafe on the roads, you can have burglary, etc., etc. Because of these impacts, we think it should be banned. This is just a roughly made argument, but you get the idea. Assertion, which is gun results in gun violence. Reasoning, which is criminal bent of mind people and other people who are antisocial can buy guns, carry out all of their weird conspiracies, or whatever they want to do in society. Impacts, where you say what results that has on society. So school shootings, burglaries, etc. All of these are impacts on society. Then you give a broad macro impact. You say people feel scared on the streets, people feel scared at home, minorities feel scared that they will be shot randomly, blah, blah, so on and so forth. And you say conclusion then. Therefore, guns should be banned. Do this for every point. That's a complete structure for an argument. Cool. Next slide, whoever's manning it. Yeah, I'll just go through. So you understood that the PM does this. The leader of opposition will do the same thing, but he will speak against the motion. So he will say, no, gun violence can be checked in other ways. We can have background checks, etc. Guns are the reasons why people can protect themselves against burglars as well. We think burglars and all can access guns anyway, even if they are banned from the black market. But legitimate civilians can't protect themselves anymore. It's not always possible to call the police. Therefore, we need protection. This is the reason from the leader of opposition, and he sets up the counter case to what government has said. I hope this makes sense, right? The deputy prime minister will listen to what the leader of opposition has said, rebut his stance. So what the deputy will do is say ki LO or leader of opposition said blah, blah, 1, 2, 3, 4. These are the reasons why they are wrong. These are the reasons why we are right. LO says burglars will be able to abide from the black market. But you can say that black market becomes so expensive in the case of a ban that the few people who will be able to purchase guns from it anyway will be too few, and the State Department can take care of them. But in a free society of gun sales, everybody can access guns. So you have far more criminals purchasing it and making it all the more unmanageable at the present instance. That's Deputy Prime Minister rebutting it and then saying, given that LO's case falls, these are the reasons why my Prime Minister's point stand. You've reinforced your PM Now you can give 1 or 2 additional arguments as well if you want. These are called extensions. New matter. The same thing is done by the deputy leader of opposition who rebuts the PM and the DPM, who explains why the leader of opposition's case stands and can give their own like couple of points if they want as well. Cool. Next slide. What does the whip do? The whip summarizes an argument. They can't introduce new points. To understand this very simply, I'll use an example. Think of the whip like if one entire side, if government as a whole were one student, okay, DPM and PM or LO and DLO are that person prior, and this person is sitting for an examination. PM and DPM are that person till the point they submit their exam sheet. Now, let's say you get your answer sheet back, your teacher has marked you in a certain way, and you think that there are some discrepancies or whatever. So you go to the teacher and you say, ki, sir or ma'am, these are the reasons why I think this answer that you marked incorrectly is actually correct. So what are you doing there? You're just explaining why things that you've already written on the paper are correct. That's what the whip does. You can't like write another new answer in your paper at that point, right? Similarly, the whip can't write or make a new argument at the point of whip. The whip can only take matter that exists and explain it. So what does government whip do? Government whip says stuff like, the prime minister and the deputy have given you 4 points. The leader of opposition and the DLO have also given you such and such points. These are the reasons why their points fall to our points. Like, this is why we win this debate, and these are the reasons why their points are wrong. So you engage with their points and you show how your points stand. Opposition whip does the same thing from the other side. One final word then. These 3 speeches are called substantive speeches. These are the main speeches of the debate. Substantive speeches run for a total of 7 minutes plus 20 seconds. So the last 20 seconds are for you to wrap up your speech. Like you give a sort of conclusion or a summary or something, and you draw your speech to a close. And the first 7 minutes are where you present your points and go at it full force, right? Stick within your time. Please do it. Some people exceed it. No adjudicator is supposed to write anything down after 7 minutes, 20 seconds. Cool. Let's go to reply speeches then. Next slide. Yeah. What does a reply speaker do? The reply speaker, firstly, is a protected speech. That is, nobody can ask a point of information to the reply speaker. Second, the reply speaker speaks for 4 minutes. Third, only the prime minister, only the first 2 speakers, so PM, DPM, or leader of opposition and DLO, only they can go reply. Whips can't go as reply speakers. Finally, in the reply speech, you can use rhetoric, honestly. The reply speech is just supposed to be like this speech where you're not doing what the whip did, where you logically analyze everything. But the reply speech is supposed to be like a politician speech of sorts. You get it? Like, you just explain why your team just was so much better than the other side and how grave their world would look. Like how grave society would look if what the other side said were actually implemented. And you give the speech, you get it done. You give a very biased perspective of the world, explaining why your points would be far better for the future of the world or present of the world as well, right? That's the reply speech. No POIs in reply. 4 minutes and again 10 seconds to wrap up. Cool. Next slide. Yeah, feedback in ballots, very important. For the adjudicators, after the speakers leave the room, you can think on your stuff for 7 minutes, your notes, and decide whom to give the debate to. Then the chair says, okay, let's let's say whom we give the verdict to. So let's say chair says government. At this phase, you're not supposed to give reasons, remember. Because if you give reasons, the other adjudicator might change their verdict or use your reasoning instead of their own, stuff like that. No reasoning. Only mention whom you've given the debate to. So let's say chair says, I give it to Gav, or chair waits for the other two people to say whom they've given it to. They say Gav off. You decide the ratio, then you go give your feedback. Adjudicator feedback is for 7 minutes, 20 seconds again. But before feedback starts, the chair is supposed to fill out the ballot. The ballot is given in your private URL. What do you do in your ballot? Every person, apart from trainees, chairs, and panelists, will be giving speaker scores to every speaker. They will, for normal speakers, they will mark them between 69 and 81. So PM, DPM, VIP, LO, DLO, VIP get marks between 69 and 81. 69 being poorest speech. If you don't even open your mouth, you get a 69. And 81 in a nation's debate being like a perfect speech, like God himself has come down and given that speech. You can get an 89. You don't get a 69. Like nobody gives you a 69. Generally, like the lowest would be a 70, 71. Like if the points make no sense, there were no reasoning given, stuff like that. Like a very bad speech gets a 70 or a 71. What is the average speech score that an adjudicator is supposed to give? It's 75 in a nation parliamentary debate. So the standard, what is average? Average means what you would normally expect a mediocre speaker to say at the tournament that you're attending. The average varies depending on tournament, remember. If you're at Worlds, you can give a mesmerizing speech and still get, in BP, the average is 77, so don't get confused, and still get an average score. In UADC, again, you can give a mesmerizing speech and get a 75, or 76. But in domestic tournaments, we have a lot of first-timers come, so the bar shouldn't be set too high. Don't mark vindictively as an adjudicator. If you think that a person is making sense, is given context and everything, give them a 75. If you see somebody giving like thought-provoking arguments, stuff that wouldn't normally come to your head, give them a 78 or a 79. And of course, like if you get like a marvelous, mind-blowing speech, give them an 81. I've gotten 81s. I know other people as well who've gotten 81s. 81 is very much achievable, but you need to give like a very good speech, a structured speech where everything is explained properly and all. I've gotten 75s as well, where I've given mediocre speeches. And in my first year, I got 73, 74s as well, where I give terrible speeches. It's up to you. Remember, 75 is average, 74 is below average, and 70 to 73 would be like way below average, like they didn't do their job properly kind of thing. Similarly, 77 to 78 is a good speech. 79 is an excellent speech, and 80, 81, mind-blowing speeches. That's how adjudicators should mark. Only chairs and panelists are supposed to give their scores. After you've done the ratio, panelists tell their speaker scores to the chair. You can write it out in Zoom chat or whichever chat you're on. The chair will fill it up in the ballot. Cool? Similarly, teams, after you've heard adjudicators give you their feedback, are supposed to give marks between 1 to 10 to the adjudicator. Don't mark people below, adjudicators below 6 unless they were terrible, couldn't explain anything to you. People have a tendency of marking adjudicators very vindictively because debaters can't stomach losses. It's a very bad habit. Think about it objectively. If you think what the adjudicator is saying is making sense, give them a 7 at least if they've given you an average adjudication. Give them an 8, 9, 10 if they've given you good feedback. Like 8 is good, 9 and 10 excellent feedback, right? And you can give for AGIS scores in the multiples of 0.5. So you can give 6, 6.5, 7, 7.5, and so on. If you mark someone below 4, the core adjudicators will contact you because that is an absurdly low score and we will want to know why you've marked somebody so low. If you've done it out of spite because they didn't give you the verdict, action will be taken against you. Cool? Okay. Scoring is done. Let's go to the next slide. Yeah, motion ranking. You get 3 motions for each round in Asian Parliamentary, and you're supposed to rank them in order. How do you do this? So, say you get 3 motions, right? 1, 2, 3. Motion 1, motion 2, motion 3. Then you give them ranks. The motion that you rank 3 or third is vetoed out. I'll explain this. And then second is your second, 2 is your second preference, 1 is your first preference. How does this happen? Let's say you get 3 motions, motion 1, motion 2, motion 3. You think on them, then comes the time for motion ranking. And you say, my third preference is motion 1, my second preference is motion 3, and my first preference is motion 2. What does this mean? It means the first motion, the one you gave the third preference to, is vetoed out. It won't be debated. The third motion, which was your second preference, is there. And you would most like to debate motion 2, which is your first preference. Like, that's what you would ideally want to debate. Let's say the other team says, motion 2 is my third preference. Motion 1 is my first preference, and motion 3 is my second preference. The other team has vetoed out motion 2 as well. Whichever motion, remember, is third preference for any team is vetoed out. It won't be debated. If 1 and 2, motions 1 and 2 are both vetoed out, motion 3 remains and you debate that. This is an ideal scenario where, like, you have each team vetoing out a different motion, only one motion remains, you debate that. There are rare cases where what happens is both teams veto out the same motion. Cool. So let's say both teams say, motion 1 is my third preference. Motion 1 is vetoed. You're left with 2 motions now, right? Let's say in the best case now, both teams have the same ranking only, like the same people. Both of you all have said motion 3 is my second preference, motion 2 is my first preference. You debate motion 2. But if you have a different ranking, where somebody gave first preference to motion 3, someone to motion 2, you have a coin toss, right? Virtually that can't happen. So what you generally do is you can do a random thing. Like the chair can ask you to pick a side. The chair can toss a coin, show you which side came up. Whoever wins the coin toss essentially gets to pick them. But this is the rarest of the rare case. Generally what happens is different motions are vetoed out. The last one that stands is debated. If you all have any questions about motion ranking though, do feel free to reach out to your runner or the person from the debate who will be there to support it. And or tell your chair, the chair can coordinate with us and we will explain what you need to do. That's all. Cool. Next slide. Code of conduct, yeah. I explained how you can ask POIs. If you asked a POI and the other person has responded to it, you cannot cross-question that person. You can't ask a follow-up question. You will have to wait for 15 seconds or something, raise your hand again. Only if they allow you to ask another POI can you voice your question. Otherwise, that's done. Yeah, again, like I said, there should be a minimal interval of 15 seconds between every POI. If you asked a POI and it's been answered, you have to stay shut for 15 seconds as a team before asking again. How many POIs are allowed per debate? Okay, so you can ask as many POIs as you want. Like you can raise your hand as many times as you want. But it depends on how many times the speaker would be taking you. No nukes. Nukes are not allowed. Yeah, I'll explain what nukes are. Nukes are not followed conventionally. Internationally, there's no concept of a nuke. Was there in India? It's not followed in India either. Yeah, I'll explain. Just 1 second. So you can raise your hand however many times you want. The speaker decides whether to take you or not. Ideally, the speaker should take at least one POI. Cool? That's all. The debating platform, I think the organizing committee will be able to explain better to you, right? So after I'm done, they can take these questions from me. A nuke was this thing that was there in some Indian circuits earlier, not nationally, only in a few circuits, where a nuke POI is where the opposition team, right, has one nuke, and it's like a compulsory POI. So a speaker speaking, the opposition team can be like nuke, and the speaker will have to take that POI. They got only one nuke POI earlier, but they would have to take it. They couldn't say, no, I won't take you or anything. But nukes are not followed anymore. Cool? There's no nuke in this tournament. As per the platform on which this will be conducted, the organizing committee will give you better clarity on that, right? Okay. Any further slides? Can we move on to the next slide if there's any, or are we done?
Yeah, we are done.
Cool, we're done. If you've got any other question, are speakers negatively marked if they're not negatively marked, but you don't get the marks that you would have gotten if you took the POI. Right. So without a POI, let's say you're getting a 75. POIs form part of something which is called engagement in adjudication. One part of there's no compulsory POI. It's up to you whether you as the speaker would want to take the POI or not. It's completely your prerogative. You should ideally take it. Why? Just like rebuttals are a scope for you to engage with the other team, POIs are a scope for the other team to engage with you. If you take a POI, you're fulfilling your engagement obligation as a speaker. Therefore, you get the mark which would have been given to you otherwise for engagement. If you don't take a POI, adjudicators might not give you marks for engagement. Simple as that. Okay. Are there any other questions? Let me see once. For ads, are they supposed to take the questions after 7 minutes? You can ask questions to an adjudicator. Don't heckle them. If you've asked a question, they've given you an answer. If you think that answer is dissatisfactory, then mark them a bit lower. But don't keep asking them a question like, sir, how could you have done this, or ma'am, or however they identify. How could you have possibly done this? It was unfair of you. Don't do all of that. Ask a question, hear their answer, mark them up accordingly. Rebuttals will also be considered for engagement, but POIs will also be considered for engagement. Yeah, I'll give you the score range for reply speakers. If we have 4 arguments for our case, and if all 3 speakers repeat all points in their speeches, won't it be repetitive? No. So what you're doing is you can add new arguments. The PM generally won't be able to give all 4 arguments. They'll give 2 at max, but let's take this case where they've given everything and you're left with, what do I do on DPM then, or DLO? What the DPM or DLO does is say, listen, this is what my PM said, but this is what LO said. Or in the case of DLO, this is what DPM said. Then you analyze why the points that you made stood. That is very different from what the Prime Minister or the Leader of Opposition did. They just introduced their points. DPM and DLO engage with the other team using those points. They're like, listen, even if you listen to the 4 things that they said, these are the reasons why our points still stand. Okay. If POIs are not asked to some speaker, yeah, there will, no, then you're not negatively marked for engagement. Then what should that speaker do? If POIs aren't being asked, they should highlight in their rebuttals how they've conclusively engaged with the other team. You can, like, around your 5-minute, 30-second mark, if nobody's asked you a POI still, you can go ahead and say, are there any POIs? I would be open to taking them. If nobody still asks you, there won't be any negative marks for engagement then. Score range for reply speeches are 34.5 to 40.5, which is half of what you would be, or 41, essentially 40.5, which is half what you would be able to get for your normal speeches, which is 69 by 2 gives you 34.5 and 81 by 2 gives you 40.5. Cool. The average scored for a reply speech is 37.5. If there are multiple POIs, then can the speaker choose to answer them on the online platform? Yeah, if somebody's written out their POI on chat, then you can pick. But a better way of doing it is simply like asking, not writing your POIs, just mention POI. The speaker can be like, okay, I'll accept. Tell me what's up. And then answer whichever POI comes your way. How much prep time do you get? You get 30 minutes. You should rank your motions within the first 5 minutes. And for the remaining 25 minutes, you should prepare. After you're finished ranking, just mention your ranking order on chat to your chair. Then you can start preparation. I hope that answers all your questions. Is there anything else? In which case, I will see it down to the organizing committee. If you've got any questions for the organizing committee, go ahead. They'll answer those questions as well. Cool. Thank you, guys. It was a wonderful session. I hope you all gained some insight out of this. That's all. Thanks.
A lot, and I guess it cleared most of the doubts, and so many queries were shooting on the chat box. It like, makes like people are really interested in all these things. Any questions you can ask? Yeah, over to you, Vikrant.
Yeah. Hi guys, regarding the platform for the debate, so we'll be giving out a tech briefing video in which we'll tell you everything how you have to do and how you have to rename stuff and what the platform will be about. So we'll be giving it out on your email ID and also on the Chronicle event page. So do make sure that you are updated by it and make sure that you are watching it and coming to the debate the day of the debate. So I think that's all we have to announce. If you have any other questions for the OC members, you can shoot right down in the chat box. And if you don't have any question, we can end it right now. The timing, you mean the schedule for the debate is already released on. Yeah, so the schedule for the tournament has already been released on our social media page. You can directly go over there, and every round, every timing of every round and how many rounds will take place, all the breaks have all been written down on that poster. Any other questions?
No, there won't be actually depend on like we will give like 3-4 minutes, but if the person don't want, then they can go ahead and just give their feedback.
There won't be any WhatsApp group that you have to join, so every communication part will be done through Discord, and the debate will happen on the Google Meet, from which you will be told about during the tech briefing.
Just be updated on your email ID. So soon we will sending these things. So don't worry about that.
Yes, the ADS test will be releasing today itself, and you'll be giving an ample time of at least 2 days to fill the ADS test, and it will be a Google Form ADS test, and we'll be just releasing it after the workshop. Thank you guys for coming out for this workshop. I hope all your inquiries and all your questions were answered by our co-educator Sayantan. And if you still have any other questions regarding the tabbing and any other thing, you can contact the convener of the debate, which we have given out in the description of the posters. Thank you so much for coming, guys. Hope to see you. Hope to see you soon. Yes, the schedule is for 3 days. All the best, guys, for the debate.